Hello, welcome to my 2023 Big Boys League pre-draft power rankings episode. After an extended hiatus from podcasting, I am very excited to be back again, this time flying solo to share my thoughts on the league's teams and providing my personal breakdowns and power rankings. My criteria is specifically rating each of these teams on the likelihood of winning the title in the upcoming 2023 season. So this is based on their current rosters, assets, and the capabilities that I see each manager bringing to the table to be able to utilize all of those assets in their teams to challenge for this season's title. I do want to point out that there might be some discrepancies between the strongest teams for just this upcoming season and the strongest teams that one might kind of perceive for their long-term value. But again, I'm focusing specifically just on this upcoming season. So take that into account as I share these rankings and the reasons behind them. At the end of the day, this is just a fun exercise for me, and I hope that you all enjoy the breakdowns and that it sparks some conversations and some activities within this league. So without further ado, let us jump right into it. All right, so we are kicking things off with the 12th ranked team, and I have determined that to be Johan. So you'll see, and I've got these on each of these teams here. I've got the report card, the informal report card, just based off of, again, my own criteria, kind of eyeballing things. I'm not using like rating systems or anything like points or anything. I'm really just taking a look at the assets they have available in each category, so quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and draft picks, giving them essentially a report card, so a breakdown for each one of those. And that's pretty much it. Basically, I'm also kind of taking into account where they have assets that are particularly strong. Perhaps they could trade them around, make things happen, kind of fill in the holes on their roster, and that will go into their overall number rating. So all of that to just explain that a little bit. But again, going number 12 with Johan here. Looking at his quarterbacks, remember we start two quarterbacks. He's got Lamar Jackson, which is definitely a QB1. Lots of interesting things to see what happens with his contract situation. But then he's got Baker Mayfield, Ryan Tannehill, and Sam Ehlinger, all of which not sure if they will be starting, playing. Even if they do, definitely in the bottom half of the QBs that one could be playing. So I'm giving him a B because Lamar Jackson is on the higher end, so definitely what you would want there. But again, a huge question mark at his second QB slot, or I guess as a super flex, it doesn't have to be a QB. Now that I'm thinking about it, even talking through, a B is perhaps fairly generous here. But we'll see what happens with Lamar Jackson, because if he comes back and he's playing, he's won an MVP. He's definitely possible of being the number one overall quarterback. So we'll give Johan a B there on his quarterback situation. Running backs, they've gave him a C. He's got Khalil Herbert, Rashad Penny, Singletary, Ezekiel Elliott, Michael Carter, Jeff Wilson, Pierre Strong, and Darrell Henderson. So the running backs, you can start two of them. And I have to be honest, of course, you had Zeke this last year. Big name, big history of being a huge back there. But this upcoming 2023 season, I am not seeing it for Zeke. I would be surprised. Maybe best case scenario for him is that he's a top 20, 25 back or something if he gets the playing time. And then he's got Rashad Penny, who just signed recently with, I want to say, the Eagles, if I'm remembering correctly. I should look that up. I should know this off the top of my head. But I'm not. Again, he just can't stay healthy. Question mark on if he's going to be the long-term answer there. Rashad Penny. We're just going to take a look at who he signed with. Yes, the Eagles. It's got Khalil Herbert, a good depth piece. But when you're starting two of them and your ability to be able to compete at that position, I'm really not seeing the assets there. So big gaps. So he's got a C there. Wide receivers, lots of wide receivers on this team. I gave Johan an F in the wide receiver category. Now, if you think about it, just the breakdowns of the rankings, your top wide receiver, you would want to be somewhere ranked in the top 12 of wide receivers. Your second wide receiver, of course, somewhere between 12 to 24. And then your third wide receiver, because we start three of them, 24 to 36. So if you think about it in that way, do you have a wide receiver 1, 2, and 3? And he doesn't have a wide receiver 1. I don't think maybe Gabe Davis would be a wide receiver 2, best case scenario, probably a wide receiver 3. Chase Claypool is in there. He's got some possibilities there. And the rest of them are just kind of guys. So he's got a lot here, but no matter what he's got, he doesn't have a wide receiver 1. He has perhaps a couple wide receiver 2s, and the rest of them are just guys. So this is a huge kind of huge deficiency, so I'm giving him an F in the wide receiver column. Tight end, he's got Dawson Knox, Tyler Conklin, John Bates, Logan Thomas. Dawson Knox can be good. He can be competitive, and he's a little bit of a streaky player. Johan did, I believe, pick up Dawson Knox or acquired him, because I know I originally had Dawson Knox. And hard to say, other than the very, very tip-top tight ends, Travis Kelce's, Mark Andrews, perhaps Kyle Pitts if he puts it together long term. Those are kind of the top, and everything else at the tight end position is kind of a huge question mark. So we gave him a C there. Again, we'll see what happens. And then draft capital. So this is an interesting thing with a lot of the teams here. Some teams have traded a lot of picks, and they're kind of very, very different from what I would say would just be the baseline for picks. So the baseline is, if you think 3 years worth of picks. So every team, their baseline is 3 firsts, 3 seconds, 3 thirds, 3 of everything all the way down to 6. Johan basically is what I would say pretty standard. It looks like he's only got 2 seconds, 3 thirds, 3 fourths, mix of fifths and sixths. He's got a lot of those for whatever reason, and he's got 3 firsts overall. So interesting to kind of see maybe where they all fall, if they're high picks, low picks, whatever. He's swapped a few things around there, but basically he's at baseline. And so for Johan's team and the other teams that look like they're basically about baseline, I'm giving everybody a C, because that's essentially average or baseline. So no real comments on the draft picks there, other than just that they're standard and average. And I've got Johan ranked 12. As we kind of move up the ladder here, we'll kind of see how the other teams are more competitive, I guess not less competitive, because I'm saying that Johan is the bottom of the barrel here. I don't see this team having a realistic way to compete for this upcoming season unless he's hitting on draft picks, or perhaps trading some of those draft picks to be able to really bolster his starting lineup. He really has huge question marks in every single category, and we're going to have to see how that plays out for him. But I've got Johan coming in at number 12. All right. Coming up next, number 11. I've got Brandon. So coming in at quarterback, I've given Brandon a B for his quarterback ranking. He's got Jalen Hurts, who I believe finished in the top 3 for fantasy quarterbacks this last year, so that's perfect. There's his QB1 right there. Huge upside with his rushing capabilities, so Jalen Hurts definitely an enormous asset and helping in the Superflex format for sure. Mac Jones is a starter, so that's something. He's got someone to start. Matt Corral, we'll see if he gets playing time. Probably not, just kind of a depth piece there. So I'm giving Brandon a B in the quarterback rating, basically just off of the upper end echelon that Jalen Hurts would be bringing. He's got the QB1, and most teams will kind of be having sort of a middle of the road QB2, which I think Mac Jones definitely fits that category. Running backs, Isaiah Spiller, Kyron Williams, Tyrion Davis-Price, Jordan Mason, JaMychal Hasty, Snoop Connor, and Kine Nwangwu. Probably did not say that right. Giving Brandon an F for his running backs. Again, in the breakdown of you have to start 2 of them, you would want somebody ranked in the top 12, and your second one someone ranked between 13 to 24 or so. He does not have an RB1 on his roster at all. Isaiah Spiller has some potential based off of what he's done in college. All of these other guys are, I would say, not in the top 50 or 75 of running backs. I would actually predict that this is probably part of Brandon's long-term dynasty strategy. Running backs turn over quite a bit. They're one of kind of, I would say, usually like the finishing pieces towards a dynasty team. That you would want to be looking at. I think Brandon is doing a good job of assessing his team and seeing, can I compete this year, or should I be looking for long-term strategy? And this is part of Brandon's long-term strategy, not having a top-tier running back, and it shows. So anyways, he's got an F for now. Wide receivers. Giving Brandon a C plus for wide receivers. He's got some guys, some good players for sure. Maybe C plus is a little bit harsh. Maybe I should be going, B minus or whatever. But he's definitely got some players here. Devonta Smith, Jerry Jeudy, Rashad Bateman, Elijah Moore, Sky Moore. He's got the Moore brothers. There you go. Not actually brothers. John Mechie, David Bell, Isaiah McKenzie, Ben Skorunek. Did not say that right. Denzel Mims, Shee Smith, Eric Uzukanma, didn't say that right. Lance McCutcheon, wow. I'm going to stop reading all of the names here, but he's got a lot of wide receivers, lots of top end talent with Devonta Smith, Jeudy, Bateman, and then Elijah Moore and Sky Moore. So again, he's got multiple players. Devonta Smith is borderline wide receiver one, could be a wide receiver one. Definitely very valuable. Jeudy probably definitely in the top 24, so he's got a wide receiver too. Bateman's probably in the same kind of spot. And then Elijah Moore and Sky Moore both have huge potential as well, so they could be great assets. And you want to have probably a handful of wide receivers since you start three of them. We've got two flex spots and a super flex spot. Is it two flex spots and super flex? I'm double checking here. One flex spot and a super flex spot. So wide receiver is a very valuable position, and he's doing okay there. So I was probably a little bit harsh with the C plus, but not too bad for Brandon there. Tight end, just giving Brandon a C. He's got Pat Fryermuth, Noah Fant, Juwan Johnson, Jelani Woods, Alberto, Donald Parham, and Will Dissly. So just kind of middle of the road there. Fryermuth is pretty solid. Not a lot of depth there in terms of the accomplishments for the rest of the guys. So not great, not terrible. That is how someone gets a C. And then the draft picks. So again, if you think of wanting to have three from every single round, first, second, third, fourth, down to fifth, or excuse me, down to sixth. Brandon, over the last couple of years, traded almost all of his draft picks away, made more moves to get more draft picks back. So he does have three firsts. Obviously, that's incredibly helpful. He's got some high picks in this upcoming draft, so that is also helping him out here. But just overall, he is much, much below what the average team would have in terms of all of the other rounds. So we're giving Brandon a below average score there, and it's quite below average, so we're going to go with a D for the draft picks for Brandon. Okay, jumping into Zach's team. Number 10, Zach. Quarterback. We are giving Zach a D rating for quarterback. So he's got Geno Smith. Oh, headset died. Geno Smith, Jimmy G, Tyler Huntley, Malik Willis, Jameis Winston, Mitchell Trubisky, and Colt McCoy. So I am not a believer long term in Geno Smith. I think he had a great season this upcoming season. Huge pickup for Zach. Basically, he turned nothing into a very good something with having great success there. But Jimmy G, I don't think is going to be helping anyone long term. And then the rest of his guys are not actually starting quarterbacks. Tyler Huntley, if Lamar Jackson is out, perhaps, but hard to say. I'm giving Zach a D for quarterback. Running backs. This is definitely a strength of Zach's team. He's got one of definitely the top 5 ranked dynasty running backs in Kenneth Walker III. Tony Pollard also seems to be the guy in Dallas, so that's fantastic. We'll see how he bounces back from his injury. James Cook, Elijah Mitchell, Donta Foreman, James Robinson, Jerome Ford, just a bunch of guys there as far as I'm concerned. But again, the kind of top tier blue chip value for Kenneth Walker is fantastic, and then Tony Pollard is solid as well. So he gets a B for the running backs. Wide receivers, so we'll just kind of shout out the highlights here. I'm giving Zach a C plus for the wide receivers. He's got Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jacoby Myers, Juju Smith-Schuster, Rondale Moore, Josh Palmer, Romeo Doubs, Michael Thomas, a little bit of a sleeper pick there. Terrace Marshall, Rashid Shaheed, Kyle Phillips, Justin Ross, and Calvin Austin III. This is not terrible. It's above average, I guess. I would say perhaps C plus B minus is about where it's at. I do think he's got multiple guys in the top 36 to kind of fill out the top 3 wide receiver categories here. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously. I think Rondale Moore and Josh Palmer are two players that he traded for, which are sneaky acquisitions because they are most likely going to be their team's wide receiver one in perhaps not this year, but maybe the upcoming year, and a lot younger than the older players that they've got on those teams. So on Arizona, you've got DeAndre Hopkins, perhaps moving on, perhaps staying with Arizona. Josh Palmer, you've got the older wide receivers there. He could be the wide receiver one for San Diego. So interesting picks there. And then Michael Thomas, um, the former wide receiver one overall, and an amazing pick there. So just injured and can't put it together, kind of older. So we'll see. He's got some assets here, a little bit above average, but not hitting it out of the park here. Tight ends, we're giving Zach a B on his report card for this. He's got George Kittle, so he's one of those guys that are kind of the top tier. And again, there's kind of a big gap, I think, between like the top tier and the rest of the guys who you just kind of start them and they're just sort of whatever. George Kittle's top tier for sure. And then Irv Smith, I think, is a valuable tight end player. I don't know if I've ever heard of Daniel Bellinger. I'm not going to lie. Taysom Hill, sneaky, rated as a tight end here. Always interesting to see like where he fits into an offense or if you can play him, start him, whatever. Interesting here. So we're giving Zach a B for the tight ends. And then for the draft picks, he's got a D in draft picks. He does not have a first round pick over the course of the next couple of years. Those are obviously incredibly valuable. He's got an extra second round pick, and then the rest of them are just kind of standard around the standard number of the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth picks. So again, below average in the draft picks, just based off of the moves that he's made. Putting that all together, that is how you come up with number 10. Okay, moving on here. Number 9, Lee. So giving Lee a B for his quarterback. He's got Deshaun Watson, Daniel Jones, Kirk Cousins, and Kyle Trask. Deshaun Watson, despite being a horrible individual person who went through all of the stuff that he went through over the last couple of years, barely playing any games, Lee has ridden out that storm. Now Deshaun Watson should be starting for the Browns, definitely given every opportunity to succeed. They paid him the most money in the league and really basically put everything together to make him the guy in Cleveland. So we will see how that goes. And Daniel Jones actually had a great season for the Giants, reinvigorated by the addition of the new coach, Brian Daboll there. So I think that is definitely a very, very solid option as your second quarterback in the Superflex League. Deshaun Watson has been the number one overall quarterback before, so he's got a strong QB1 and a pretty strong QB2. Kirk Cousins is there to provide depth as well. So, and then Kyle Trask, he might be the starter in Tampa Bay, so we'll see about that. But overall, pretty solid in the quarterback room for Lee. Okay, coming up on the running backs, Lee has a D for the running backs. So Dameon Pierce, David Montgomery, Antonio Gibson, Leonard Fournette, Naheem Hines, Dearness Johnson, Chris Evans, never heard of him. Kyle Harris, never heard of him. Myles Gaskin, go Dolphins, and Gary Brightwell, never heard of him. So does not appear to have, I guess maybe he's got a borderline wide receiver one. If you look, maybe a couple of them, Dameon Pierce, Montgomery, and Gibson, they're all kind of middle of the road. None of them, David Montgomery is definitely the most successful, has had a good season before in the past, but seems as though the Bears are kind of moving away from him, of course. Gibson can't seem to stay healthy and put it all together. Fournette is definitely sort of aging out. Not the long-term answer there. Dameon Pierce definitely was the hype guy from last season, but didn't really accomplish anything last year. So not looking super great in his running back department. So he's getting a D there. Might be a little bit harsh. Maybe this should be a D+. Wide receivers, also giving wide receiver ranking a D for Lee here. He's got Jahan Dotson, Cortland Sutton, Brandon Cooks, Tyler Boyd, bunch of other guys. He's got OBJ. I think that's his number one problem. As we know, OBJ is cursed. That's bringing his entire team down. Also has Jalen Reagor, also a curse as far as I'm concerned. Not the wide receiver one talent on the roster. Maybe Cortland Sutton is a number 2. Hard to say. I like Tyquan Thornton. He's also on this team. A little bit of a kind of a long-term dynasty play there. Fastest guy, I believe, in the combine last year. So interesting asset for sure, and did have one good game for the Patriots, so perhaps something there. But overall, not competitive in this position. Gets a D there. Tight ends, he has Kyle Pitts, Zach Ertz, and Austin Hooper. So giving Lee an A for his tight ends. So Kyle Pitts is definitely a maddening player. He is seen by everyone as the long-term wide receiver one in the league, or not wide receiver one, excuse me, the tight end one from a dynasty asset perspective. Hasn't actually earned that thus far in his first two seasons. Has done just kind of okay, but tight ends typically take a little while to put it all together. So a little bit of a maddening player there, but we definitely see the potential long term with him. So we'll be optimistic that he will put it all together and be the tight end one overall eventually. Zach Ertz has had some really good seasons, of course, and I think he can still be a good depth piece for Lee moving forward. And then Austin Hooper, also another solid tight end piece. So not too bad. And then in terms of draft capital, looks as though Lee is short a first round pick from previous deals, and the rest of it seems to be kind of standard. So we gave him a C here. Could be maybe a C minus since technically it's a little bit below standard. But I've got Lee coming in at number 9. All right, moving up to number 8. So Aaron comes in at number 8 for me. So giving Aaron a C minus in his quarterbacks. He's got Jordan Love, Kenny Pickett, Derek Carr, Gardner Minshew, and Zach Wilson. I do not see a QB1 on this roster. It is possible Jordan Love could get there with the rushing upside, but we'll have to see. That's still a little bit of a question mark in terms of does Rodgers leave? I think he probably certainly will this time. Seems like it's Jordan Love's job to lose here, but he hasn't really put it together in the starts that we have seen him, and when he's come in. So we'll see. Don't know if that's a QB1. Kenny Pickett is perhaps a QB2. He's probably in the top 24 of QBs. Certainly young, and as a rookie last year, did kind of just like okay. Derek Carr is probably in the same kind of spot, also probably in that QB2 range. And then Gardner Minshew and Zach Wilson look like they're both going to be bench QBs, so probably not very valuable there. So overall, not crazy competitive. Could be worse, but not the top tier for quarterbacks for sure. Running backs, he's got a B minus for the running backs. Miles Sanders, Brian Robinson, Kenneth Gainwell, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Raheem Mostert, Treston Ebner, never heard of him. Darrell Williams, also maybe never heard of him. Not sure who he plays for. I think the Chiefs. I'll look that up. But not bad here. So Miles Sanders had a great season. Brian Robinson is now the starting running back for the Panthers. Brian Robinson had the unfortunate injury situation, the shooting at the beginning of the season last year, after doing extremely well in the Commanders training camp. So perhaps he's the starting running back in Washington. So we'll see about that. And then CEH is a good depth piece for sure. Interesting player for sure. So he's got decent depth here and some good assets. So B minus for running backs. Wide receivers. I love Aaron's wide receiver room actually. B plus. Maybe I should have gave him an A minus. So he's got AJ Brown. Definitely wide receiver 1 for sure. Definitely in that top 12, if not top 5 wide receiver dynasty asset. So love AJ Brown. Drake London also fantastic. Probably I would also say a wide receiver 1. So he's got I would say 2 wide receiver 1s, and then Treylon Burks as well. Did not accomplish a wide receiver 1 season. Kind of had some injury situations, but did okay for a rookie, especially considering that Tennessee was not the greatest throwing team last year. But he's young, tons of potential, did amazing in college, so I can definitely see something there. He's definitely a hold as far as I'm considered. Then he's got some other great depth too. Marquise Brown, Christian Kirk, who had an amazing season for the Jaguars, MVS, Tre'Quan Smith, Tylan Wallace, Jamison Crowder, Des Fitzpatrick, and Robbie Anderson. So he's got some assets, and he has multiple, I would say, wide receiver 1s and people who can and should be starting for fantasy teams. So B plus for wide receiver for Aaron. Maybe that's a little bit harsh. Maybe that should be A minus. So not too bad. Tight ends gets a D for the tight ends. David Njoku, Hayden Hurst, and Mo Alley Cox. I guess you can start David Njoku. He's okay. Seems like again just another one of just these random guys. Same thing with like Hayden Hurst and Mo Alley Cox, not the top tier. Probably certainly want to be starting somebody else if you can, but that's what he's got. And then draft picks, very, very standard. Seems to have basically just the standard order as everybody else, the 3 in every round. Looks as though he's got 2 for the second rounds from one move that he's made, and then the rest of them just pretty standard. So coming in with a C as the average draft pick situation. Okay, moving on to number 7, Jeremy. Had to put Jeremy at number 7. That's just where he belongs in this league. Finished 7th multiple times. I'm not going to break tradition. We're going to give Jeremy 7. But that being said, Jeremy definitely has some assets and is in a very interesting team, I think, moving forward. So, quarterbacks. Justin Fields, Trey Lance, Brock Purdy, Taylor Heineke, Carson Wentz, and Nick Foles. So we're giving Jeremy a B plus in the quarterbacks. Very interesting. This is, I would actually say, huge range of possibilities. It's a B plus. This could very well be an A plus if Trey Lance comes back, actually plays up to what the 49ers expected when they drafted him. The rushing potential, just the athleticism. Amazing offense in San Francisco, but just huge question marks. Is he the guy? Lucky for Jeremy, he's got Brock Purdy if Trey Lance isn't the guy to be able to be the second quarterback that he needs. And then Justin Fields also very, very interesting, very, very valuable player. He's possibly a top 5 dynasty quarterback asset there. Could be number 1 overall player. So really, really interesting there. Huge ceiling, but also very low floor for Jeremy's quarterback situation. Not bad. I think he was very wise and to pick up Purdy. That was probably the move of the year last year. So shout out to Jeremy for that. B plus overall for his quarterbacks. Running backs also pretty solid. He's got Jonathan Taylor, probably a top 3 dynasty running back. He was a dynasty running back 1 last year. Got hurt, didn't have that great of a season, but definitely a strength there moving forward. Isaiah Pacheco, Cam Akers, Samaje Perine, who perhaps could be getting a starting gig this upcoming season. Hassan Haskins, Big Boss Zach Moss, Justice Hill, Jontrell Hilliard, Matt Breida, shout out Dolphins, and Marlon Mack. So I think Jeremy's got good running backs to be able to start. He definitely has the running back 1. He has a running back 2. If you think about perhaps Akers or Pacheco, maybe some of the other guys, he's got decent guys for his bench as well. So overall, I would say this is a B in the running back situation for Jeremy. For wide receivers, CeeDee Lamb, DK Metcalf, Darnell Mooney, KJ Hamler, De'Ami Brown, Quez Watkins, Nick Westbrook, Ikine, Velus Jones, never heard of him, and Kenny Galladay, perhaps the most disappointing fantasy player of the last handful of seasons. So B for his wide receivers. If you think about CeeDee Lamb and definitely being a wide receiver 1, DK Metcalf's also probably a wide receiver 1, so this is a team that probably has 2 wide receiver 1s. Mooney is probably in the wide receiver 3 territory. The rest of them are just kind of guys or whatever, so not bad. Maybe B is a little bit harsh, actually. This could probably be B+, maybe A-, but gave him a B here, so definitely a strength for Jeremy there. Tight ends. Gave him a C- because he only has Evan Ingram on the roster. Evan Ingram did have a really good season for the Jaguars. Definitely kind of revitalized his career. Did really, really well with Trevor Lawrence. But it's the only tight end that he has, and who knows if something happens to him. Of course, he has assets to be able to make moves, but can't really give him anything higher than like a C- when you only have 1 on your roster. And then the 1 is kind of questionable. And then draft picks seems to be very standard, has roughly the standard number of picks, so C in the draft pick category. Okay, so number 6, borderline playoffs here. Think about Jeremy and Johnny. This is just how it kind of finished last year as well. So got Johnny coming in at number 6. If you remember my disclaimer, very interesting comment about how what I would say ranking these teams looking at this upcoming season, I see Johnny as having a very competitive roster based off of the players that are on his roster. Long term, it's going to be very interesting to see how he kind of navigates because he doesn't have the draft picks, which we will get into. But the roster that he actually is able to put together is very competitive and I would say has the capability to literally beat anyone in the league. So Johnny's team is very, very interesting. Quarterbacks gave him a C here. Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton, obviously, depth piece. Russell Wilson, horrible season, but has shown the capability to be an incredibly valuable fantasy quarterback. So we'll see if he bounces back, has a much better second year in Denver with Sean Payton, new coach, better system perhaps. And then Aaron Rodgers, certainly old, definitely not the long-term dynasty asset which we've talked about here, but his capability, he's won MVPs just a couple of years ago, multiple MVPs. So if he ends up in New York, which looks like that's going to be the case, he certainly has the possibility, Johnny does, of having two quarterback ones to be able to start. So could be huge, but also they had rough seasons last year, so we'll see what happens there. So gave him just a C, but that could possibly move up to an A. So we'll see about that. Moving on to his running back situation. So this is a strength for him. B plus in his running backs. He's got Christian McCaffrey, Ramondre Stevenson, Alvin Kamara, Damian Harris, Chuba Hubbard, Gus Edwards, Tyler Batty, Trey Sermon, and Mike Boone. His ability to be able to start what I definitely the A running back one in Christian McCaffrey, if not, he was the definitely like the top player over the last handful of years at the running back position, if not overall. So huge asset there. Huge hit in the draft, drafting Ramondre Stevenson. Alvin Kamara, we will see how many games he plays this year, if at all. So interesting to see there. But a big asset. He's got Damon Harris, who I believe is startable. So B plus in the running back department for Johnny. Moving on to the wide receiver. So also decent spot for Johnny here in the wide receiver category. So T. Higgins, Stephon Diggs, Wan'Dale Robinson, Kendrick Bourne, Devontae Parker, Josh Reynolds, Demarcus Robinson, Nelson Aguilar, Khalif Raymond, Randall Cobb, and Julio Jones. So between T. Higgins and Stephon Diggs, I think he has two wide receiver ones there. Wan'Dale Robinson was having a great rookie year before he got injured. Should be back next year. Should be solid and be able to basically beat Johnny's serviceable wide receiver 3 there. So again, I would just say like top end tier talent for Stephon Diggs and T. Higgins. A strong wide receiver room for Johnny. Moving on to tight ends, Dallas Goedert, who had a great season and is now in Houston, if I remember correctly. Or no, that's Dalton Schultz. I think I get them mixed up. I'll double check on that. But good season for Dallas Goedert. He's got Chisholm, Okongwu, Isaiah Likely, and Adam Troutman. Quite the player with Adam Troutman. So C plus overall. Definitely Goddard, I would say, is a great, good, if not decent, tight end one. And then the rest of the guys, Okongwu, showed huge potential as well as Isaiah Likely. So C plus might be a little bit harsh now that I'm thinking about it. He probably should be getting maybe B minus for the tight end room. So not bad. Definitely serviceable, startable players. Draft, got to give Johnny an F plus for the draft assets here. So he does not have a pick in the first, second, or third round. He only has fourth, fifth, and sixth rounders. The reason why I gave Johnny an F plus is because Johnny has shown himself to be very strong in drafting. Actually, he drafted Ramondre Stevenson. He's had other hits throughout the course of his process here, like the tight end Okongwu. Drafted him as well, Isaiah Likely. So as far as drafting ability, I would say actually Johnny is doing really, really well with the picks that he does have. So that's why he's getting the F plus here, but doesn't have any first, second, or third rounders. So that's going to make that really, really challenging. But shout out for his drafting ability for sure. All right, moving on to number 5. So this is where we're really getting into basically teams that I think could be, and Johnny as well, when we kind of mentioned his ceiling, the teams that could really, really possibly compete here for the championship. So coming in at number 5, Sam, quarterbacks, Kyler Murray, Desmond Ridder, Bailey Zappi, Mike White, Jarrett Stidham, Cooper Rush, and Tom Brady still on the roster, just in case. So we're giving Sam a B. He's got Kyler Murray as a QB1, which I think Kyler Murray certainly deserves. The rest of it doesn't really have a QB2 in terms of being able to start. Maybe Desmond Ritter, but they might be drafting. They probably will be drafting another quarterback. So we'll see if they start right away, or if they are taking the job from Ritter, or if Ritter plays. We'll see about that. But Kyler Murray, high end QB1 for sure. So B in the quarterback room for Sam. Running backs, so kind of similar to, I would say, Brandon. I would say Sam strategically probably does not really have a great running back on his roster, as he kind of looks towards kind of like a longer term rebuild. Interesting that even in that longer term rebuild, I've still got Sam coming into the number 5 team. But Sam definitely has the assets to be able to kind of fix this. Definitely want to mention he does have the 101 overall, so he will probably almost certainly be drafting Bijan Robinson, so add that asset to the running back room, most likely here, but doesn't have another one worth starting. So as of now, it's an F, but add Bijan to this, probably immediately becomes at least a C plus, if not B minus here. All right, moving on to wide receivers. Sam has Michael Pittman Jr., DJ Moore, Alan Lazard, Isaiah Hodgkins, Darius Slayton, Devin Duvernay, Juwan Jennings, Sterling Shepard, and some guy I've never heard of, Olamide Zacchaeus. So decent wide receivers. So Pittman, Moore, and Lazard are all definitely worthy of being starters for sure. Pittman probably borderline wide receiver 1, if not 2. DJ Moore, we'll see if how he does in Chicago. Huge talent, incredible to get him out of Carolina, and we'll see what we can do on a different team. But the Bears are not the greatest at throwing. Maybe it's because they didn't have anyone good to throw to, so we'll kind of see about that. Then Lazard is also a decent piece there. The rest of them, just kind of guys. So B minus in the wide receiver room for him. Tight ends. Giving Sam a D minus for the tight ends. Jake Ferguson, Cade Otton, Tommy Tremble, Brock Wright, Kalen Granson, Colby Parkinson, and Rob Gronkowski, I guess, just in case, just like with Tom Brady. Interesting. Didn't really notice he had both of them there. So there's not a startable tight end on his team. Most of these are just random guys. Maybe Cade Otton. He's shown that he plays every once in a while and can have some good weeks. So I guess you've maybe got Cade Otton, but not really any assets there in the tight end room. Now for the draft assets, Sam gets an A for this. So he has definitely above average draft assets. This is his long-term strategy. So multiple first-round picks. Let me count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 first-round picks over the course of the next upcoming 3 years. So of course the average is 3. He's got 7, so over double that. Second-round picks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So over the average in the second round picks as well, and then tons of thirds, fourth, and fifth picks. So he's got tons of draft assets. Again, he does have the number 1 overall this year, and he's got multiple picks in the first round this year, multiple picks over the course of the next couple years. So if he drafts all of those players, definitely injecting tons of youth and tons of talent into probably all of the categories on his team. So gets an A for the draft assets. All right, the next contender, number 4, Randy's team. So Randy definitely, I would say, across the board, basically has strong, above average starting lineups in every single category. So we'll start off with the quarterback: Justin Herbert, Jared Goff, Jacoby Brissett, Marcus Mariota, Carson Strong, and Matt Ryan. So let's see here. How many of these guys actually start? So Herbert, Goff, Brissett might start. Mariota probably won't. Carson Strong won't. Matt Ryan probably will not as well, but Herbert, probably top 5 dynasty QB. Goff had a great season, and then we'll see about the other guys. He's got the depth that you would need, so pretty good. So B plus for quarterbacks. Running backs, B minus. So Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, AJ Dillon, Alexander Madison, James Conner, Keontae Ingram, Jarrett Patterson, Latavius Murray, Larry Roundtree, and Rex Burkhead. So between Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon, so he's got both of those guys, kind of got that locked up. Alexander Madison should get increased workload for the Vikings. He's got great depth pieces in Connor. We will see about what happens with Mixon. I've heard interesting news that Mixon is possibly someone that could get cut. He's definitely super. Okay, moving on to wide receivers. So I'm trying to be humble here, but I'm giving myself an A plus for the wide receivers. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Cooper Kupp, Debo Samuel, DJ Chark, Greg Dortch, Laviska Shenault, Van Jefferson, and Jalen Darden. So I think that it is very safe to say that Jefferson and Chase are literally ranked, depending on if you flip flop them or not, the wide receiver 1 and the wide receiver 2 for dynasty rankings. So got both of them there. Waddle is also probably a borderline wide receiver 1 as well. So I've got 3 of the wide receiver 1s. Not to mention Cooper Kupp, who was actually the wide receiver 1 2 years ago, and like broke like every single fantasy football record for the wide receiver position. Should be back this year, kind of bouncing back for the Rams. And then Debo for depth, as well as DJ Chark. The rest of them are just kind of guys. This is a really good situation for a wide receiver. I don't see how it gets much better than this. So giving myself an A plus for the wide receiver room. Tight end, giving myself an A. I have Travis Kelce. He's the de facto tight end 1. It's really kind of him and Mark Andrews that I think you can get an A for the tight end position. Then we've got Cole Kmet. High potential there, potentially. Mike Gesicki, we'll see if he bounces back for the Patriots. Brevin Jordan and John Smith are just kind of guys, but really just kind of based off of the strength primarily of Kelce as far as being a difference maker for a team. Giving myself an A for the position there. And then draft picks. Also huge draft assets. I know Sam got an A plus in the draft pick situation. I'm also giving myself an A plus from the draft situation just based off of the quantity of picks that I have. Lots of firsts, lots of seconds. Traded quite a bit of draft picks over the course of the last couple of years. So huge capabilities there. We'll see what happens. Okay, moving on to number 2 overall. I have Jasper coming in at number 2. Huge respect to Jasper, huge respect to the champ, and just his overall ability to play fantasy football really, really well. Always seems to make the right moves. Doesn't make a ton of moves, but the ones that he does make seem like they're always really, really strong ones. So shout out to Jasper for just his ability overall. Looking at his quarterback room, he's got Joe Burrow, Matthew Stafford, and Davis Mills. So Burrow is certainly a QB1. Stafford, when he moved to Los Angeles a couple years ago, he put up a QB1 season as well. Davis Mills doesn't seem like he's going to be a long-term starter, but he's a depth piece, I suppose. But we're giving him a B plus for the quarterback situation, just based off of Burrow and Stafford mostly. His running back situation is great, so he's got an A for running backs. Eckler, Derrick Henry, Jamal Williams. Amazing season for Jamal Williams. Kareem Hunt, we'll see where he goes in free agency. Could be a starter, basically. Zonovan Knight, Cordarrelle Patterson, Joshua Kelly, Amir Abdullah, and Jake Funk. Just Eckler, Henry, Williams, Hunt. That's really, really strong. So an A for the running back situation. We're giving him an A minus for the wide receivers. So he's got Devontae Adams, wide receiver 1 for sure. Christian Watson, probably that wide receiver 2 category. Terry McLaurin, probably also a wide receiver 2. So he's got great guys to start. Amari Cooper, probably also wide receiver 2. Mike Williams, also capability of being wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. He's got a good young piece with Alec Pierce. He's got Michael Gallup, Hunter Renfrow, Tutu Atwell, Richie James, and Marquise Goodwin. So great depth, great high-end talent. Seems to have this position covered very, very well. So A minus for the wide receiver positions. And then tight end definitely gets an A for tight end. So he's got Mark Andrews. He's got one of those top tier guys, which we talked about in terms of having a difference maker at that position. He's got Dalton Schultz, who is probably would be starting for most of the fantasy teams in the league here. Had a really, really good season. So that's fantastic to have backing up Andrews, or maybe you even start both of them in a tight end premium. So not too bad there. Hunter Henry and Robert Tonyan as depth pieces. So not too bad there. Very, very strong tight end room for Jasper. And then draft picks, very, very standard. Gets a C on the report card for the draft picks. Only has 2 firsts and 2 seconds. The rest of them are pretty standard. This should probably be like a C minus, since technically it's a little bit below what the average would be. But that is what we've got. And number 1 overall, you have to pay respect and deference to the champion until he is unseated. We are ranking Anthony as a number 1 overall team. So really, really strong in every single position here. So we'll break them down. Quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes. again, just like Josh Allen, it's either him or Josh Allen as the QB1. So he's got Mahomes, got that covered. He's got Dak Prescott, Sam Howell, Sam Darnold, Drew Lock, and Skylar Thompson. Shout out Skylar Thompson. Dak Prescott definitely in the QB2, if not borderline QB1 fantasy quarterback as well. So between Patrick Mahomes and Dak, he's definitely got a very, very strong quarterback situation. Running backs, A plus in the running back room. So he's got Saquon Barkley, Javonte Williams, Najee Harris, Nick Chubb, DeAndre Swift, Rashad White, Tyler Algier, Zamir White, and Deion Jackson. So his capability to start a really, really strong running back in the two starter positions as well as depth if he needs it. So perhaps you're starting Saquon, perhaps you're starting Najee Harris, perhaps you're starting Chubb or Swift. He can really kind of mix and match. A couple of them are going to be sitting on the bench most games, but that is probably what you want in the running back position because they get hurt. There's different situations. Maybe there's a bad game matchup or whatever. So definitely very strong in the running back situation. The wide receiver situation, giving Anthony an A for wide receivers. Garrett Wilson, Tyreek Hill, Jameson Williams, Chris Godwin, Calvin Ridley, Deontay Johnson, Kadarius Toney, Tyler Lockett, Nico Collins, Corey Davis, and Allen Robinson. So I would say again, he's got the wide receiver one covered with Tyreek Hill, if not Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson is perhaps a top 5 wide receiver dynasty asset. Jameson Williams didn't play half of the season because he was recovering from injury that he sustained in the national championship game 2 years ago, but he should be back. High potential there. Chris Godwin has been wide receiver 1 in the past, as well as Ridley. Deontay Johnson's kind of like borderline wide receiver 2 or 3. Tyler Lockett just puts up wide receiver 2 seasons like season after season after season. So tons of depth. He's got all those positions covered. So an A for the wide receiver position. He gets an A for the tight end position. So he picked up Hawkinson later in the year. So he's got TJ Hawkinson, Darren Waller, Gerald Everett, Harrison Bryant, and Foster Moreau. So again, Hawkinson, great player to be starting here. Waller also, a strong starter. We'll see how he does in New York. A good situation to be having for the tight end position in a tight end premium league. So he has that covered. Got the A. And then draft picks. I gave Anthony an F, so hear me out. So he is a little bit below average. So he only has 2 first-round picks instead of the standard 3. Only looks like he's got a good handful of seconds. So he's kind of moved down, given himself a handful of seconds. Standard number of third and fourth. But the thing about Anthony is he cannot identify talent to save his life. He's horrible at drafting. Just he can't figure it out. So no faith in his ability to use any of these assets to actually draft players. He should probably just trade them around, which is what he does. So shout out to him for understanding that, but this is a huge weakness for him. I don't care if he had a million first-round picks. I'm still giving Anthony an F for draft picks because he does not know what he's doing. So lucky for him, he's got a bunch of good players all in the position that actually score points because draft picks don't score points. All right. So we'll be wrapping this up here. So the tiers, I kind of broke everything down in what I see as like just sort of a tier ranking of teams' ability to win the championship. So I really, really see Anthony, Jasper, and myself as being the realistic teams that can actually win. Randy, Sam, Johnny, and Jeremy, I think they have rosters that in the right circumstances, they could be competitive, and it's possible. It is theoretically possible that they could win with their rosters, given a good week. If, one of the other playoff teams has a bad week, it is possible. So we're putting them kind of in the tier 2. And then I would say 3 and 4 don't really have a shot this upcoming season just based off of the strength of the top tier teams. We'll see what they do like long term moving forward, kind of building the dynasty team. That's what's so much fun about dynasty is it's a long term game, but their ability to compete this year, I do not currently see it. So I've got that for 3 and 4. 4, a little bit of a shout out 4-4 or 4 tier 4 just because I really could see them losing just about every single game the entire season unless they play each other. So, I don't really see much of a long-term possibility for them. So this has taken way too long, almost 50 minutes on the podcast here. Again, looking forward to hearing everybody's reactions, their thoughts. Definitely add them to the comments when I post this. Would love to get some reaction videos or podcasts, just audios of what you guys think as I've broken down all of your teams. Again, would love to continue the conversation, but that is the pre-draft rankings as it sits right now. And hope you guys all enjoyed it. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks.